That was really good. That was definitely terrifying. I feel like there were a few times where it could have been a little bit more terrifying. I will say that. Overall, I would probably give the game... All right, so what I got for my review of Choo Choo Charles. Played the whole game, did a whole session of it, and I dare say that was really good. That was definitely terrifying. Definitely multiple aspects of that game was spooky. It definitely kept me on the edge of the seat and everything, so that is really, really good. First off, we have the developer info / history. So what do we know about the developer? This is an important thing to be considered in game reviews, honestly. People compare too many things, as we've discussed. They compare indie games with AAA games way too many times, and honestly, you kind of need to look at them in their own light, in their own way. So that's why we're going to be looking at this the right way. The game was developed by a single individual. He was the singular guy. It was his concept. He did all the work, put everything together. He did, when you look at the credits and everything, he did have some help from many other people who helped build a few things. From the looks of it, he probably contracted some work from other people to have like models designed, a few things like that. Here and there, things that he couldn't do. But otherwise, the concept, the script, and all the major things about the game and the final put together product, he did. He definitely did a good job. When looking at a few things here, it was the solo developer, I should say, was Gavin, who is the founder of 2 Stars Games. And I gotta say, he did a really good job. From what I found, he does have a couple other games on Steam that were published by a couple different publishers, and he was the developer behind, at least, or his studio at least was. But this was probably his most recent work, and it was really good. It was developed and published by him. Just keep that in mind now with all the other stuff. It is a indie solo developer, so he did a lot of the work and everything himself. Really good concept, really well done. The game, state, and potential. So what we got for this is it is a survival horror open world first-person game. The game was released late 2022. So it came out, a couple quick patch jobs to maybe just spruce it up a little bit, but then that was it. So then when it comes to potential and stuff like that, I will say with it being done and it doesn't look like there's any talk or any major things about any potential updates at the time or any extra stuff or anything like that. And with how the game was built and how it ended and with my experience of it, I would say it's not one of those live service games. It's kind of a story. You do it, you're done. That's it. If anything, you could expect maybe a sequel, but that's about all you could really expect at this point. But it is in a finished state. The game did not have any kind of bugs for me or anything like that. It did feel polished. Was it top tier kind of animation put together and all that kind of stuff? No. It's not a blockbuster type of game. It's not AAA, but again, it's not AAA, it's indie. Obviously, it's not going to be absolute top tier, but for a indie developer, it is well put together. So it is smooth and it's finished. On to point number 3, which is the graphics. If I remember right, looking it up and everything, it was made in Unreal Engine 4, so 5 obviously wasn't out yet. So with that, it definitely did look good. With the graphics, there was some stuff here and there. I did not experience any kind of visual graphical issues or anything like that with the game. It was really good in that sense. It did look good. Now, did it look like photorealistic? No, but it looked good enough. And honestly, I feel like they did develop it right with how the graphics were to make it terrifying. Like, it was just right to the point. Like, you don't need to look photorealistic. The fact that it didn't quite look that realistic kind of helped it be a little more terrifying for me. And then when it came to a few things, we'll talk about the voice acting a little bit, but when it comes to the graphical side, yeah, there was no graphical stuff when it came, like, there wasn't great detail, like when you saw certain things die in the game, a character and an animal and stuff like that after doing a couple of side missions and stuff like that, optional missions. There wasn't like a lot of detail in there, and that's perfectly fine, but there was no mouth animations or anything like that. So with that, it did feel off. Now, that honestly kind of felt like a pro con, but in a good kind of a con, to where, yes, there was no like mouth animation or anything like that with the vocals, but at the same time, that kind of made the game unsettling, if I'm being completely honest. Just the fact that somebody was talking to you, but they weren't actually moving their mouth. Understandably, not the easiest thing to animate and to kind of get right with wording, but it honestly did kind of make the game a little more unsettling when you really kind of think about it that way and look at it. So, instead of it just being a graphical thing that they didn't, or an animational thing that they did not put into the game, it was actually kind of when you looked at it, and that did kind of help with the feeling of the game. So, but otherwise the environment looked good. It was definitely terrifying. The layout of the entire island, all that kind of stuff, the way that Charles was built and whatnot for a train, definitely spooky with the way that he moved and everything. So in that aspect, it was very good. On to point number 4, which is the gameplay. For the game, honestly, it wasn't bad gameplay. It was definitely minimalistic. The controls and everything were very simple, not over the top or anything. When it came to the aspect of driving the train back and forth, stopping, all that kind of stuff, switching tracks, all those kind of things, definitely was really well done when it came to the gameplay. And when it came to just like the upgrading system, the progression system to the game as well, it was pretty good. Like it felt like you were progressing very well, not too quick per se for a short story game and stuff like that. So it definitely felt pretty good in that respect. The different weapons and stuff like that for fighting Charles definitely felt good, where you could swap it out. It was very well balanced in that regard, where you could easily switch them out and get back to the weapon if you were quick enough to fire on them. One thing was the stealth. When it came to the stealth gameplay, it did take a little bit to try to find out exactly, like, okay, is it sight, what's the distance on this, what's all these kind of things, how does that aspect work? Multiple times I would just go in and get spotted by the mob or whatever they're called, or the guys working for Warren, and I would just have the train parked just right, so I would get their attention, bring them out to the train, and I'll shoot them. So you totally do that. You don't necessarily need to stealth it. You can stealth it. It is possible. It just took a little bit to get used to, and it can be a little janky. And once you get spotted, then you kind of have to do something quickly. You can lose them, it seems like. I was able to a few times, but they are pretty relentless at the same time. So you can't quite tell if you lost them or not. You just got to break that line of sight long enough, I suppose. Now, sound design. Sound design was very, very good. I will say that. When it came to the gun sound effects from either the weapons on the train or from the bad guys, the whistle from Charles and the train, the sound of the trains moving, the brakes, and the voice acting was actually very good. Despite the animational things going on with the models, the actual voice acting was done very well. It was entertaining. It wasn't like overdone. It wasn't underdone. It was very well done. I was actually very pleased with that. I honestly wasn't really sure how much voice acting was going to be in the game, and actually seeing how much was in the game, it was done very well with the multiple NPCs that had the voicing and stuff like that. It was honestly pretty good in that regard. When it comes to the sound design was very well done in this game, and I'm very pleased with that. Really good sound design. Now, controls. As I said, kind of back with the gameplay and everything, I'll touch up more on it now. When it comes to the actual control aspect, it was very simplistic. Thankfully, you could rebind a few things. I did rebind a few things, but otherwise the controls weren't like over complicated or anything like that. For what the game was and what the kind of things you had to do in the game, the controls did feel pretty good. It felt very responsive on mouse and keyboard. I did not try it with controller, but I'm pretty sure it would have felt really good. It does have controller support, or at least partial controller support, it seems like. All in all, when it came to the control systems and everything in the game, it was done pretty well. Once you actually kind of figure out how like the train could work, where it's like if you just go straight to braking, it would still take a little bit if you were going like full steam ahead. But if you actually do the opposite of what you're doing, so if you're going forward and you reversed and then use the brake after that, it would slow you down quicker. That kind of definitely helped. Just being able to maneuver things. Once you get the hang of it, it was very easy to maneuver around with the controls. So they felt smooth. They felt well done. Very happy there. Now, the story and the lore. I will say that's probably the biggest thing with this, is that the story was actually very well done. For a very short game, it was actually very well thought out story and pretty good. Like, yes, like the whole premise of the whole thing, and trying to stay away from some spoilers here, is you're just on an open world island in an old train traveling around quickly, upgrading it over time, and then you're just fighting an evil spider trained named Charles. It kind of felt more like a gimmick than anything, but honestly, there was enough story here, so it didn't feel that much like a gimmick. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, no, you're just fighting Thomas the Tank Engine on legs, essentially, and a creepy face. Like, the story there, it's like, oh yeah, no, you're there trying to help deal with it and stuff like that. You're helping the locals. There was a little bit of extra lore. It was very easy to follow. I will say that is nice that is kind of a double-sided coin, essentially, when it comes to story and lore in some games, depending, where you can either have it very simplistic, anybody can follow it, you don't miss anything, you play through it, you're good. And then you can also have like deep lore and a lot of extra kind of stuff too. There was some notes and a few things like that you could find in the game and whatnot for some extra lore about like kind of like some of the characters on the island. So there was that, but honestly, like it wouldn't have been hard to go through and find everything and read up on all that kind of stuff, and then you're just good to go. So one thorough first playthrough, you could probably get everything. And that brings us to our final point, which is the replay value. I would say probably for myself, one playthrough and I'm good. Now, if you are a completionist or a trophy hunter, which is honestly a fantastic thing, there is definitely several that you can go after for achievements and such. I was able to get 23 out of 25 achievements in the game. I got 92%, and that was in my one playthrough. So the only two that I didn't complete is collect all the paint cans and defeat Charles in nightmare mode. So that is where you could probably get a little bit of replay value out of, is with the nightmare mode if you want more of a challenge to play the game. I would probably say if you're a trophy hunter and you're trying to look for all that, honestly, probably 2 playthroughs and then you're probably good, unless you just really like the story and then you play it again. I've done that with a lot of games. Some games that really wouldn't make any sense to play again and again, I have played again and again. So it does just kind of depend on what your taste is when it comes to that. But all in all, I'd say probably 2 playthroughs and you would at least experience the entirety of the game. Or if you did it right, technically, if you're really that ambitious, you could just start up nightmare mode at the beginning and do everything. So technically, if you're that ambitious and you want to do everything, you could complete everything in one sitting and one playthrough. But I will also say the game is short enough, I will say this, with the replay value, I could also see speedrunners, like seeing just how quickly could you get through completing the base requirement for the game and actually beat it. I could also see that being a thing. So there is that aspect in the game where a lot of times for games like this, where you have a story, and if it's short enough, a lot of times there's actually a speed running competition for it. I wouldn't be surprised. There most likely is one for this. I haven't checked, but there most likely is one for this. So that's where my final say on the game, with everything that we've experienced in the game. And again, with it being an indie developer, a solo dev, looking back at everything for story and how the ending went, again, I'm going to avoid spoilers, but I will say good ending. I definitely enjoyed that. The length of the game, the potential replayability, gameplay, controls, sound, graphics, game state, and all that kind of stuff. And also considering the price and whatnot, just overall, I would probably give the game... I feel like there were a few times where it could have been a little bit more terrifying. I will say that. Just a touch more. Like, even just like tweaking a few things to where Charles could like just pop up a little bit more at random and whatnot, or maybe just a couple extra jump scares potentially, then it would make it really terrifying. But as is, I'd say I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 for what the game is trying to achieve. And for what it is, they delivered. And considering the fact that it's an indie developer and whatnot, we're not comparing this to a AAA title because that'd be unfair. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 iron bars. 9 out of 10 iron bars is what I got for you. The reason for that is that if it was a couple extra little jump scares here and there, or just something a little extra when you're exploring the map that isn't quite Charles or maybe related to Charles, like when you get to certain key points, maybe have like a quick little cutscene or interaction or something like that, just to kind of amp it up a little bit more. Maybe, yeah, have him patrolling a little bit more, maybe just to kind of keep that, or that thrilling and tenseness up potentially. But again, the game set out to be what it is, and it achieved what it set out to be. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the game. Definitely enjoyed. Probably won't be playing again, at least not for a while. Maybe someday I'll return to it and play it, but otherwise, I enjoyed my experience. It was fun. I got spooked. I had a few laughs and everything, some goofy moments, and yeah, definitely a good game. I definitely enjoyed it.